The battlefield was silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the heavy silence that came after destruction. After screams faded and engines stopped, after blood soaked the ground and smoke covered the sky, the human soldier walked slowly through the ruins, his boots crushing broken metal and ash. He had stayed behind when others moved out. Something inside him told him not to leave yet. His rifle hung loose, but his eyes were sharp, watching, searching. The war had ended hours ago, but the air still burned with the smell of fire. Machines still smoked. Bodies still lay where they had fallen. He had seen battlefields before, but something about this one felt different, heavier, as if the earth itself was grieving. Then he heard it. A faint sound, not the wind, not the crackle of fire, but a voice weak, broken, almost lost in the silence. He froze. Every instinct told him to ignore it. His commanders had said clearly, no alien survivors were to be saved. Leave them. Let them die. But his heart pushed against his orders. He followed the sound, moving carefully between the shattered walls. And there she was, an alien warrior, her armor broken, her body half buried under rubble, her legs twisted. She could not move, her face pale with pain. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, not with strength but with fear. She tried to lift her arm, but it fell back with a dull thud. She was paralyzed, and the soldier knew instantly. Her people had abandoned her. For a long moment, he just stood there, torn. She was the enemy. She had fought against humans. She had spilled human blood. She was the reason some of his friends would never go home. Yet here she was, helpless, broken. Not a warrior anymore, but a life hanging by a thread. He remembered the faces of his comrades. The orders barked at him. Leave them, they are not ours to save. But her eyes, those eyes were not of a soldier anymore. They were of someone begging, silently, desperately. His fingers tightened around his rifle. His mind screamed at him to walk away. But his feet would not move. He crouched beside her, brushing rubble away. She winced, a small sound escaping her lips. It was more than pain. It was shame. Shame that she had been left behind. The soldier spoke softly, though he knew she might not understand. You're not alone. His voice was steady, but inside he was not steady at all. She looked at him, confusion flickering in her gaze. No human had ever spoken to her like that. She tried to form words in her own language, broken syllables that trembled in the air. He could not understand, but he felt the meaning, the plea not to be left behind. His heart pounded. The weight of choice pressed down on him. If he carried her, he would be called a traitor. If he left her, he would carry the memory of her eyes forever. The silence of the battlefield grew heavier. It felt as if the dead themselves were watching him, waiting to see what he would choose. Finally, with a deep breath, he made his decision. He slung his rifle across his back and slid his arms under her broken body. She gasped as pain shot through her, but she did not fight him. She simply clung to the faint hope that he was giving. She was heavier than he expected, her armor cracked but still dense. Every step would be hard, and he had no idea how far he could go before being seen. But he tightened his grip and rose to his feet. The ruins stretched before him like a maze of shadows and fire. Every corner a danger, every echo a threat. But he kept moving, carrying her, one step at a time. Behind them, the battlefield stayed silent. But the silence was different now. It was no longer only about death. It was about a choice. A dangerous, impossible choice. One human soldier had broken the rule that everyone else followed. He did not know what waited ahead. Punishment, betrayal, or death. But he knew this. He would not abandon her, not while she still breathed. And in that silence, a bond had been born. A bond that no one else in the galaxy could understand. The soldier's arms ached as he carried her through the ruins. Her broken armor pressed hard against his chest. Her body was weak, trembling, yet her eyes never left his face, as if she was trying to understand why he had not abandoned her like the others. Every step felt heavier than the last. He knew what he was doing was forbidden. He knew the punishment if his commanders found out. Humans were told to leave alien survivors. No exceptions, no questions, but his heart would not allow it. He remembered his squad's faces when they pulled out. Some of them had seen her lying there. They had walked past without even looking twice. He could still hear one of them saying, "Not our problem, let her rot." Those words cut deep now, because he had chosen the opposite path. The alien warrior groaned softly, her voice rough with pain. She muttered words in her own language. Sounds he could not understand, but he could hear the tone. It was the sound of someone asking why a human soldier was helping her. He adjusted his grip and whispered back, "Because you're still alive." His words were simple, almost foolish, but he meant them. She blinked slowly, confusion still painted across her alien features. The road ahead was dangerous. Smoke hung thick. Enemy patrols still searched the outskirts. And on top of that, his own human scouts could appear at any time. If they saw him carrying her, they would call him a traitor. They would not understand his choice. He ducked into the shadow of a broken wall, his breath heavy, his arms burning from her weight. He glanced down at her face again, pale and marked with lines of pain. Yet there was something more, something that pierced through the weakness. Pride. Even broken, even paralyzed, she carried the pride of a warrior. For a moment he wondered what she had been before this. Perhaps she was a commander. Perhaps she had led charges that slaughtered human soldiers. Maybe she had killed men he knew. And now here he was, protecting her. The thought cut at him, but he pushed it away. War was cruel. War stripped everyone of mercy, but he refused to let war take his humanity. The alien stirred in his arms again, her hand brushing weakly against his armor. Her fingers curled slightly, not to strike, but almost as if to hold. It startled him. He glanced at her, and she looked back with tired eyes that no longer carried hatred, only disbelief. He whispered almost to himself, "I shouldn't be doing this." But still he kept walking. The ruins grew darker as he entered an abandoned sector. Shattered towers leaned against each other like broken teeth. Fires flickered faintly in the distance. Every sound echoed. Stones falling, metal creaking, his boots crunching ash. He moved carefully, every step a risk. In the distance, voices carried. Human voices, his fellow soldiers. He ducked low, pressing his back against a cracked wall. Holding her close to silence her groans, the voices came nearer. Men laughing careless, but their words made his stomach tighten. "Orders are clear. Leave the alien scum. Let them die slow." One voice said, "They deserve worse after what they did to our boys." Another added. Laughter followed, cruel and sharp. The soldier closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against the wall, his heart hammering. They were his own people. And yet in this moment, he felt farther from them than from the paralyzed alien girl in his arms. The patrol moved on, their voices fading into the distance. He waited until the silence returned. Then he slipped out of the shadows, moving quickly. He had no time. If they caught him, it would all be over. He found an abandoned shelter, half a building still standing. With a roof barely intact, he slipped inside and laid her down carefully. She winced, her body shaking with the movement. He knelt beside her, pulling the last of his water from his canteen and holding it to her lips. She hesitated, her eyes narrowing, perhaps expecting poison, perhaps expecting a trick. But then her lips parted and she drank slowly, her hands trembling as she tried to hold the canteen. He let her, watching as drops ran down her chin. For the first time, her eyes softened, her voice weak but steady. She spoke again in her language. And though he could not understand, he knew what it meant. It was thanks. He leaned back against the wall, exhausted, staring at the cracked ceiling, the weight of his choice crushing him harder than her body ever had. He could not turn back now. He had crossed a line. The alien warrior's eyes closed, her breathing shallow but steady. She was alive because of him. And in that broken shelter, the human soldier realized the truth. He had not saved her out of duty, or pity, or even guilt. He had saved her because deep down he refused to be like everyone else. He refused to let cruelty decide his path. It was his choice, his alone. And though it might destroy him, he knew one thing. He would not regret it. And somewhere, in the silence of that ruined city, destiny shifted. Carried by the choice of one soldier who stood against everyone, the human soldier woke before the sun, his back stiff from the cracked stone floor, his arms still aching from carrying her all night. Beside him, the alien warrior lay silent, her chest rising and falling slowly, alive, but weak, her legs unmoving, her body broken. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and for a moment he wondered if it had all been a dream. But then he saw her eyes open, faintly glowing in the dim light. She looked at him without words, and in that gaze, he felt the weight of his choice press down again. The world outside was no safer than before. Smoke still rose in the distance. Patrols still roamed, and death was waiting at every corner. But now he carried something more than his rifle. He carried a life, and that life made every step heavier. He broke a piece of his ration bar, placing it carefully by her lips. At first she refused, pride flashing in her eyes. She turned her head away, but her body betrayed her hunger. Her hands trembled as she finally accepted, chewing slowly, her eyes never leaving his. He did not speak much. There was no need. And even if he tried, she would not understand most of his words. Yet there was a silent language growing between them. The way she looked at him, the way he moved carefully around her. It was fragile, but real. When he lifted her again, his muscles burned. Her armor pressed into his shoulders, but he held on. Step after step, the ruins stretched endlessly, and with every corner turned, the danger grew. As they passed through the skeleton of a burned-out factory, he heard footsteps. He pressed his back against the wall, holding her close. Her breath was shallow against his neck. The voices came nearer, harsh, alien voices this time. Her people. She stiffened in his arms, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered something fast, urgent. Though he did not understand, he understood enough. She did not want them to see her like this, paralyzed, weak, abandoned. It was a shame deeper than death. The patrol passed, their voices fading into the smoke. He waited long after they were gone, then stepped forward again, her body trembling faintly. He looked down at her, and for the first time, he saw tears at the corners of her eyes. He did not speak. He only tightened his grip, carrying her onward. Hours passed, his throat dry, his legs heavy. The ruins stretched into wasteland, broken towers fading into barren ground. The sun burned above, and he felt the weight of her body as if it were part of him now. Every few steps he thought about stopping, about leaving her, about saving himself. But every time he looked down and saw her eyes, the thought died before it could grow. He found a small cave near the edge of a collapsed hill, shelter from the sun. He laid her down gently, his own arms shaking as if they no longer belonged to him. He sat beside her, drinking the last of his water, then offering the rest to her. She accepted slowly, her lips brushing the canteen. She looked at him then, and though no words passed that he could understand, her eyes said what her voice could not. She knew. She knew he was paying a price heavier than any order. The silence grew thick between them, the kind of silence that carried meaning. He wondered about her past. Had she been feared by her people? Had she been celebrated? Did she ever think she would be here, helpless in the arms of the very enemy she had sworn to destroy? The night came fast, the stars sharp above the wasteland. He lit no fire, afraid of patrols. The cold pressed against them both. He shifted closer, placing his coat over her. She tensed at first, then slowly relaxed, her breathing steadier under the thin fabric. He did not sleep much. Every sound outside the cave made his heart beat faster. Every shadow seemed alive. Yet through the fear, one thought kept him awake. The weight he carried was no longer just her body. It was the weight of survival, hers and his bound together. In the dead of night she stirred, her voice soft, broken. She spoke a single word, repeating it again and again. He could not understand, but the tone was pleading, fragile. He reached for her hand. Placing his calloused fingers gently over hers, her voice stopped. Her eyes closed, and for the first time, she slept without trembling. He stared at her, the alien warrior who should have been his enemy, and yet, in that moment, she was more than that. She was proof that survival was not about orders or flags or bloodlines, it was about choices, and he had made his, even if it destroyed him. As dawn broke once again, painting the sky with fire, the soldier lifted her in his arms once more. His muscles screamed, his back ached, but he did not stop. The ruins were far behind. The wasteland stretched wide, and the path ahead was uncertain. But he knew one truth. The weight of survival was now theirs to share, and neither of them would face it alone. The sun was harsh when they left the cave. The soldier carried her again, step by step, across the cracked earth. His muscles burned, his throat was dry, but he did not stop. The paralyzed alien warrior rested in his arms, her gaze fixed on the horizon, silent but heavy with thought. He had saved her life, but survival was more than moving forward. Survival meant choices, and choices meant consequences. He knew the truth. His own people would call him a traitor if they discovered this, and her. People would curse her for living on the mercy of a human. Still, he carried her, still she held on. The road turned through a broken settlement, shattered homes, empty markets, bones scattered in the dust. She looked around with hollow eyes. He wondered if she once walked streets like these with pride. Now she lay helpless, her body refusing to obey her spirit. Inside his chest, a storm grew louder each day. He did not fear the enemy as much as he feared his own kind. If humans caught him with her, they would not care for reasons. They would not listen to his heart. They would only see betrayal. And yet each time he thought of leaving her, he could not. He remembered the sound of her weak cry in the ruins, the way she looked at him when he offered water, the way her trembling hand tried to hold his sleeve in the night. These memories chained him more strongly than orders ever could. That night they hid in the skeleton of a burned tower, the air thick with ash. He laid her gently on a slab of stone, her breathing shallow, her lips pale. He gave her the last of his food. Pushing it into her hands, she shook her head at first, but then accepted, chewing slowly as she ate. He studied her face in the dim glow, her alien features sharp, yet strangely fragile, pride and pain still etched across her expression. He spoke softly. "Why did they leave you?" His voice cracked. He did not expect her to understand, but she looked at him, her eyes wet, and whispered in her own tongue, the sound low and broken. He could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Her people had abandoned her because she could no longer fight. To them, she was no longer a warrior, no longer of use. Her shame was heavier than her wounds. The soldier clenched his fists, anger rising. He thought of how many humans would have done the same, leaving behind the weak, the broken war-made monsters of everyone. And maybe that was why he refused to walk away. Maybe he refused to become a monster. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of distant fire. Then she lifted her hand slowly, painfully, her fingers brushing against his arm. Her eyes searched his face, not with hate, not with pride, but with something else, something softer. He froze. Her touch was weak but deliberate, and in that moment, he understood. She was beginning to trust him. Trust, fragile as glass, dangerous as fire. The next day, danger came close. Human scouts swept through the ruins, their voices sharp. He ducked low, pressing her close against his chest, hiding behind the broken wall. They laughed as they searched, their words cruel. "If any alien crawls out, we finish them, orders are clear." His heart pounded, her eyes wide with fear. He pressed his hand gently against her lips, silencing her shallow breaths. The scouts passed, footsteps fading, but the weight of their words cut deep. His own people were the threat now. When the silence returned, he moved quickly, carrying her out of the settlement, his mind heavy with doubt. He no longer knew who the enemy was. Was it her people who abandoned her, or his people who demanded cruelty? Or was it the war itself that made everyone blind? That night, when they stopped again, he could not sleep. He sat with his back against a wall, staring at her as she lay wrapped in his coat. He whispered softly, words she could not understand. "Maybe the real enemy is inside us." His voice shook. He was not sure if he was speaking to her or to himself. She stirred, her eyes half open. She looked at him for a long time. Then, with great effort, she reached for his hand, her fingers locking weakly with his. Her lips moved, a single word in her alien tongue, soft and fragile. He could not understand it, but the tone was clear. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something close to gratitude. His chest tightened. He realized in that moment that the greatest danger was not the patrols outside, not the commanders or the hunters. The true danger was within him, the growing bond that tied him to her, a bond that could break everything he once believed in, but he did not let go. He held her hand until her breathing slowed into sleep, his eyes fixed on the shadows outside, his heart torn between loyalty and compassion. And in that quiet night, with an alien's hand resting weakly in his own, he felt the truth. Sometimes the enemy was not the one across the battlefield. Sometimes the enemy lived inside the heart. The soldier knew their time was running out. Whispers had already spread through both armies. Someone had seen him carrying her. Someone had spoken of a human who dared to save a paralyzed alien warrior. Now hunters were searching. Not only the enemy, but his own people too. He tightened his grip around her as he moved through the ruins, her body light yet heavy in his arms. Her eyes followed every shadow, every sound. She could feel the danger as clearly as he did. They were no longer only survivors. They were prey. The ruins stretched into a twisted forest, trees blackened by fire, branches sharp like claws, the ground soft with ash. The soldier pushed forward, his ears sharp, hearing the faint crack of footsteps behind them. The chase had begun. She stirred weakly in his arms, whispering words he could not understand, her voice urgent, her eyes full of fear. He hushed her softly. "I know. They are close." His voice low, steady, though inside his heart thundered. He moved quickly, weaving between the blackened trunks. But the hunters were faster, their voices cut through the air, harsh commands, human voices and alien voices alike, both sides hunting the same pair. The soldier ducked low, hiding behind a fallen log, her breathing shallow against his chest. He listened as the patrol moved past, their boots heavy, their rifles ready. One voice laughed cruelly. "The fool thinks he can save one of them. He won't last the night." His teeth clenched. He held her tighter, waiting until the footsteps faded. Then he slipped out again, moving deeper into the shadows. Every step slower, quieter. Survival now depended on silence. The night came quickly, covering the forest in silver light. The soldier found a hollow beneath a broken ridge. He slid inside with her, covering the entrance with branches. Her eyes were wide, frightened. She trembled not from cold, but from fear. He whispered to her, softly, "We'll make it, I promise." Though he did not know if he could keep that promise. They stayed hidden as voices grew nearer again. The hunters were searching. Closer. Closer. He pressed his hand gently over her mouth. His other hand, gripping his rifle, ready if they found him. Her eyes locked on his. Trust and fear mingled together. Minutes dragged like hours, but the hunters passed, their torches fading into the distance. He lowered his rifle slowly, his chest heaving. She relaxed against him, her hand weakly touching his sleeve as if to say she understood. The next morning they moved again, but the chase never stopped. Every ruin, every path carried danger. Once they stumbled upon alien scouts, her own kind. They laughed when they saw her, pointing, mocking, calling her dishonor, useless. He could not understand their words, but her tears told him enough. His blood boiled. He raised his rifle, firing into the air to scatter them, carrying her away before they could regroup. She clung to him weakly, her pride shattered by their cruelty, but his arms never let her fall. Days blurred into nights. The chase never ended. They hid in caves, in burned-out houses, in holes in the ground. Hunger gnawed at him. Thirst burned in his throat. But he gave her everything first. She ate before he ate. She drank before he drank. His body weakened, but his spirit hardened. One evening, as they hid beneath an ancient bridge, torches flickered above, human voices echoed. "Find him, the traitor is carrying her, alive or dead, bring them." The words pierced his chest like knives. Traitor, that was what they called him now. He looked down at her, her glowing eyes, staring back, no longer only filled with fear, but something else, something new. "Wonder, why would a human risk everything for her?" he whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Because you deserve to live." She blinked, tears glistening in her eyes, her hand weakly reaching for his. Their fingers touched, fragile but real, and in that brief moment, the hunter's chase faded, replaced by something greater than survival, a bond born in fire and fear. But the danger was not gone. The hunters would return, louder, stronger. The galaxy itself wanted her dead and him punished. And yet, as the stars burned above, the soldier knew one truth. He would not stop, not while he still breathed. The chase was far from over, but neither of them were alone anymore. The forest ended, and the broken city rose before them. Towers, cracked like old bones, streets covered in ash, silence heavy in the air. The soldier carried her through the shadows, his legs weak, his breath short. He knew the hunters were close. Closer than ever. He found shelter in a half-collapsed building, laying her down gently against the wall. She looked at him with glowing eyes, her voice soft but urgent in her own language. He did not understand the words, but he felt the meaning. She was telling him to leave, to save himself. He shook his head, his voice low but steady. "Not without you." His hands tightened around, his rifle, his heart beating faster. The night fell, and with it came the sound of boots, many boots. Voices carried through the ruined streets, some human, some alien. The hunters had joined forces, united not by peace but by hatred. Hatred for her, hatred for him. The soldier stood tall in the shadows, his rifle ready, his body trembling with exhaustion but his spirit burning. She watched him, paralyzed yet fierce, her pride broken by her people, but her will still alive. The footsteps came closer. Torches flickered through broken windows, voices shouted, "There, find them, the traitor and the cripple." Cruel laughter followed. The soldier's jaw tightened, his heart pounded. He looked at her once more, her hand weakly reaching for him. Her lips moving, she whispered something soft, a word he could not understand, but it felt like trust. He placed his rifle in her lap, his eyes meeting hers. She shook her head weakly, her body broken, but he pressed her hand around the weapon, whispering, "We fight together." Her fingers trembled, but she held the weapon, her glowing eyes locked on his. In that moment, she was no longer just a paralyzed warrior. She was his partner. The hunters burst into the building, shouts echoing, rifles raised. The soldier stepped forward, firing into the dark. The shots cracked loud, sparks flying off walls, bodies dropped. Screams filled the air, but more poured in. She lifted the weapon with shaking hands, firing wildly. Her aim poor, but her spirit strong. The bullets struck stone and metal, but some found their mark. Her lips curled in a fierce cry, her pride as a warrior returning, if only for a moment. Side by side, human and alien, they fought in the ruins. His rifle steady, her spirit unbroken. The hunters pressed harder, bullets flying, the building shaking with every blast, dust falling from the ceiling. The soldier bled, a cut across his arm, pain burning, but he did not stop. He pulled her closer, shielding her with his body, firing into the shadows, every shot a promise. He would not leave her. The hunters shouted, "Kill them both!" The voices mixed, human and alien, united in cruelty. But the soldier shouted back, his voice raw, "Over my dead body." His words thundered louder than the gunfire. The fight dragged on, the air thick with smoke and blood. But still they stood, still they fought. She fired until her hands gave out, the weapon falling, her strength gone. He caught it, firing with both hands, his body screaming with pain, his spirit burning brighter. At last, silence returned. Bodies lay scattered. Torches burned out. The hunters retreating into the dark. The soldier fell to his knees, his chest heaving, his blood dripping. But he was alive, She was alive. She looked at him, her eyes wide with shock. Her lips trembling, she whispered in her language, words filled with emotion. Though he could not understand, he knew the meaning: gratitude, respect, and something deeper. He sat beside her, leaning against the wall, his rifle heavy in his lap, her hand weakly reached for his. Their fingers touched, fragile but unbroken. Together they had stood. Together they had fought. The last stand had not ended in death. It had ended in survival. And in that broken city under the shattered sky, a new truth was born. Not enemy, not traitor, but two souls bound by choice. For the first time, she closed her eyes without fear, resting against him, and he let himself breathe, knowing the fight was not over, but knowing too that they had faced the worst, and they had faced it together. The dawn broke over the shattered city, light spilling across broken towers and streets painted with ash. The soldier sat against the wall, his rifle leaning beside him, his body weak, his wounds raw. Beside him, the alien warrior lay wrapped. In his coat, her eyes closed, her breathing faint but steady. They had survived the night, but survival was not victory. The sound of distant engines rolled through the ruins. Both armies were coming. He knew it. The humans hunting the traitor. The aliens demanding the death of their disgraced warrior. This was the end of their path. He looked at her, her glowing eyes slowly opening. She met his gaze, her lips moving, weakly whispering words in her tongue. Though he could not understand, he knew what she was saying. She was telling him to let go, to run, to save himself. But he shook his head, his voice low but firm. "I will not leave you." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of his soul. The engines grew louder, shadows moving at the edge of the city, armored soldiers closing in, banners of both sides flashing through the dust, a circle tightening around them. The whole galaxy seemed to demand a choice. He stood, his legs shaking, lifting his rifle, his body screaming from exhaustion but his spirit unbroken. She tried to push herself up, but her body betrayed her. She could not move. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear but from shame. She did not want to be the reason. "He died!" The human commander's voice rang out. "Soldier, stand down, step away from the alien, surrender and you will live." From the other side, an alien officer shouted, "Human, release her. She must face the honor of death. She cannot remain weak." Two voices, two orders, both demanding the same thing, her life. The soldier looked at her once more, her eyes wide, trembling, waiting for him to abandon her. But he stepped forward, standing tall between her and the armies, his rifle raised, his voice carrying across the ruins. "No!" The words struck like thunder. Silence rippled through the hunters. His commanders shouted again, "You betray us. She is the enemy." But his voice cut through louder than all. "She is alive and I will not abandon her." The alien officer spat with rage. "She is broken, useless, not fit to live." But the soldier turned his gaze on him, his jaw tight. "Then you know nothing of honor." The armies shifted, rifles raised, the moment heavy with fire. But the soldier did not move, his shadow cast over her broken body, his stance unshaken, his choice clear. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause, neither side firing, both staring at the human who defied them all. And in that silence, something powerful began to stir. The alien warrior felt it too, her chest tightening, her glowing eyes filling with tears. She had been abandoned, rejected, left to die. Yet here stood a human refusing to let her go, protecting her not for duty, not for power, but for something far greater. Hope. She reached for him with trembling fingers, her hand brushing his leg. He looked down, his heart aching, and for the first time, he saw her not as an enemy, not as a burden, but as someone worth saving, worth fighting for. The humans shouted again, ordering him to surrender. The aliens raised their rifles, demanding her blood. But the soldier raised his weapon higher, his voice a roar. "If you want her, you will have to kill me first." The silence broke. Shouts echoed. But no one moved. No one dared. In that moment, one soldier's choice had broken the rules of war, his defiance stronger than orders, his compassion brighter than hatred. Slowly, the hunters lowered their weapons, unsure, shaken. What they saw was not weakness, it was strength. The kind of strength that could not be commanded, the kind that changed hearts. The alien officer snarled, but his soldiers hesitated, their eyes shifting, their resolve cracking. The human commander growled, but even his men did not move. They were caught by the sight of a soldier standing for something greater than flags. At last, the armies withdrew, step by step, vanishing into the smoke, leaving the ruins quiet once more. Not because they accepted, but because they could not face what they had seen. The soldier fell to his knees, his body finally giving out. The rifle slipping from his hands, she reached for him, her trembling fingers brushing his cheek, her lips moving in a whisper, soft and fragile. He did not know the word, but he knew the meaning. Thank you. He leaned against her, his eyes closing, his breath heavy, and she, broken yet alive, looked at him as if seeing something she had never believed in before. The choice he had made had changed everything. It had broken chains of hate. It had planted seeds of hope. It had shown that one human's heart could stand against the cruelty of two worlds, and as the sun rose higher, burning gold through the broken city, the paralyzed alien warrior and the human soldier sat together, not as enemies, not as traitor and shame, but as survivors, bound forever by a choice that rewrote destiny,